consult both primary sources and secondary sources. So this was a true labor of love to bring this man's life and history of what he did to my readers.
Fantastic. So the book is Myron Taylor, The Man Nobody Knew, the first biography of Taylor. And the reason that Myron Taylor is the man nobody knew is simply because, as our guest said, is because he shunned publicity and let his actions speak for his great and legendary accomplishments. And the fantastic author joins us today.
We're having some problems.
Are we having more technical issues, my friend? Can you hear me? Because this is the second phone line. Now. This is the only. I'll have to try a different line. Can you hear me now, my friend? Or are we going to be able to keep going here? Okay, so I am just gonna let you talk. I am gonna get the hell out of the way so we don't have any problems here. So tell me a little bit more about this book, and I'll just let you have the floor. Talk, my friend. Sell the book here.
So this is a book that's really amazing because it's telling for the first time things that no one has ever heard before about World War II, the Vatican, what happened after World War II, all these things. So, for example, Mr. Taylor is the man who really was at the forefront of creating the economic system called Bretton Woods. He also was one of the vital people involved in creating the United Nations. And that's all apart from what he did at the Vatican. At the Vatican, he did amazing things. So, for example, he talked the Vatican into agreeing, essentially going against church doctrine, to agreeing with Lend-Lease aid being extended to Russia. So $11 billion that otherwise would not have gone to Russia when they were facing the Nazis went through to Russia, saved Russia, allowed them to beat the Nazis on the Eastern Front because of Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor also talked the church into not agreeing to try to mediate the war, and agreed essentially to a no-compromise peace process, which then Roosevelt translated into his unconditional surrender policy, which was very controversial. And the church actually turned out not to like that too much. So Taylor had to spend most of the second part of World War II convincing the Pope and his advisors to play ball on the unconditional surrender policy. Also very important is Mr. Taylor's role in trying to save the Jews in Europe and interacting with the Pope and the Vatican in that role. This is one of the most hotly debated issues in history today, and the book is going to be right in the center of that debate. My conclusion is different than a lot of other people's, which is the Pope is neither a saint nor is he a villain. He was facing very difficult situations, and it really depends what year in the war you're talking about and what country in Europe you're talking about as to the church's role with respect to saving Jews. So it's a very controversial subject. It doesn't really lend itself, unfortunately or fortunately, to slogans or one-liners, which a lot of people have relegated it to, unfortunately. So those are just some of the issues. Mr. Taylor also was almost single-handedly brought relief aid to Italy after it dropped out of the war, really helped to restore Italy's vigor when it was really at death's door after World War II had sort of sapped all of its resources. So this is a man who did so much in international diplomacy to shape the world we live in. It's a very important subject and story that people should know, and I'm really very honored and pleased to be the person who's bringing that to life. So I'll stop there. How's that, James?
No problem. We've got Evan Stewart with us today. Myron Taylor, the man nobody knew. And Mr. Stewart joins us here on our big program. So what is some of the lessons that you want folks to take from your writing?
Well, one of the most important, James, is the kind of man that Mr. Taylor was and why he was a success, and what we could learn from that today. So he was a success first in dominating industrial life in America in the 20th century, because he didn't always think that he was right. He believed that he should listen to someone else's point of view, try to understand what made them tick and why they were saying what they were saying, to see whether there was some value in that, and try to accommodate those views. We don't have many, if any, people in public life who do that today. I strongly believe we'd obviously be better off if we had. So just to give you one example, when he was the CEO of U.S. Steel, he agreed, the first major company in America, he agreed to let U.S. Steel be unionized. And as I say in the book, one headline in a business journal, quote, "All America gasped" when he did that. Nobody could believe it. And every other business leader, almost every other business leader, called him a traitor. But it was the greatest thing that he could have done, not just for labor, but also for U.S. Steel. And J.P. Morgan, the country's leading financier, said that was the finest performance in business he'd ever seen. So Taylor's ability to see the other point of view in business then translated into his success later as a diplomat, because he wasn't trying to shout louder than the other person or tell the other person you're wrong. It was really to listen and to see what he could learn and then try to understand the other point of view. But just to give you one example of this ability, in 1942, on a trip back from the Vatican, he met with Generalissimo Franco in Spain, and Franco was thinking of joining the Axis powers, which would have been a disaster for the war from our perspective. And in just 1.5 hour meeting, Mr. Taylor dissuaded him from doing that. And I know that because not just contemporary records from the U.S. ambassador who was present for this meeting, but in the ambassador's memoirs, he said, after meeting with Mr. Taylor, Generalissimo Franco never talked about joining the Axis powers ever again. So that gives you an idea of what an impactful person Mr. Taylor was, even in just an hour and a half, with someone as powerful as the leader of Spain.
Fantastic. We have got Evan Stewart with us today. Myron Taylor, the man that nobody knew. The fantastic Mr. Stewart joins us here on our big program. So what's been some feedback that you've gotten on the book so far?
The feedback has been happily very positive. I think people appropriately have found that they're learning things that they've never known, they've never seen before, no one's ever talked about. And that's really because these archives have never been revealed. So that's been terrific. And again, it's not because of how great I am. It's just telling Mr. Taylor's story from sources that have never been seen before. So that's been very nice. And as people hear more about it, they get more excited about it. And many people who have written me by email, just unsolicited, saying they're ordering 10 books for their friends because these are things that their friends should know about. So that sort of word of mouth and expanding the sort of wave of the impact of the book has been really, really very nice, James.
That's awesome. We have got a great guest with us today. Evan Stewart is with us. Myron Taylor, the man nobody knew. And he joins us today here on our big, big broadcast. So what's next for you as an author?
Well, I'm actually, first I've got to sort of get more of the word out on this book, but I actually have a second book in the works based upon teaching I've done for a number of years. I'm going to put a book together on the worst Supreme Court decisions ever. And there are a lot of them, for better or for worse. And this is an area that I've been teaching for a long time, and I've just been highlighting. So, for example, there are cases called the insular cases, probably that you've never heard of, or the Gold Clause cases you've never heard of. There are more famous or infamous cases called Dred Scott or Plessy v. Ferguson, which you may have heard of. But over the course of our 200-plus year history, the Supreme Court, unfortunately, has made a lot of mistakes. No one's perfect, of course. But I think both for law students, because these cases are never talked about in law school, and for people who want to know more about the court and our history, I think this would be an important book. So that's when I get finished with getting the word out on this book, that would be next up.
So how are you with something like Supreme Court decisions? How are you going to cover? And I don't know what the actual decision was, but I know that it essentially legalized bribery. It said that corporations are people too, and it basically allowed all these super PACs and all these people to donate unlimited amounts of money to these campaigns, and we could basically essentially buy off political officials.
Yes. That will be a chapter in the book, the influence of money in politics.
Yes, awesome.
Part of the problem, James, is we have a Supreme Court now, unlike in prior generations, that really has no practical experience in politics. So they've really been just legal academics before they went on a Federal Court of Appeals bench and then up to the Supreme Court. So they don't have the practical experience of people who actually were in politics, so they really don't understand how money works in influencing politics. So they've issued a number of, shall we say, bad decisions because, frankly, you're never going to get money out of politics. The question is, can you regulate it appropriately? And the Supreme Court has made some, as you say, bad decisions in that field. So that will be a chapter.
That is fantastic, because I think more people, especially legal people, should know how we've gotten to the point that we are in the United States, and that's even gone beyond what has happened. What do you, as a legal person and as a legal scholar and all these things, what do you think of this Clarence Thomas situation, where he basically they've pretty much just legalized bribery, and he's done all sorts of things here fairly recently with Republican donors and all these various things?
No, I think you have to, respectfully, I think you have to be careful there, James. The gentleman that's been involved in this, in the various trips that Mr. Thomas and his wife have been on, that fellow has no cases in front of the Supreme Court, so there's no influence there.
Okay.
And the rules that existed that relate to the disclosures or non-disclosures, really they've been changed recently, but for the time period that people are trying to target Mr. or Justice Thomas, that those really didn't apply. So this is really more sort of hard-knuckled politics.
Yeah.
People who don't agree with his point of view and his judicial philosophy are trying to take a run at him, and they tried to take a run at him through his wife and her politics and the political activities, and now they're doing this. And I don't know Justice Thomas. I've appeared before him, but I don't know him. He's obviously made a pretty stern stuff, so I would be surprised if this is really affecting him. He's been through a lot of difficult periods in his public life, and this is not the toughest. So I'd be surprised if this water did not just run off his back.
That is awesome. Well, how do we get this latest book and get involved with what you're doing online?
It's available any bookstore. You could order it, or you can go on Amazon or hit a button and it'll be delivered to you within days. So it's generally available anywhere. You just Google Myron Taylor and my name, and you'll see it, or walk into your local bookstore and say, "Can you order me the Taylor book, The Man Nobody Knew?" And they can do that. So it's generally available, and a lot of people, if you go onto Amazon, you'll see quite a number of reviews of the book already. And I do know that there's some reviews and publications are in the works as well. So it's, as my publicist says, doesn't happen. You don't publish it in the next day. It's a bestseller. There's a process.
Yes. Yes.
We're sort of going through the process.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that about books. I've been interviewing authors and dealing with PR people for what seems like decades now, and a lot of authors do not understand that simple concept. So I think that's great that you do.
Yeah, it's a book, James, that there's so many people interested in what happened in the World War II era. This will tell people things, not just one or two things, but 10, 15, 20 things they never knew happened in World War II. Not just small, tiny things, but incredibly consequential things that changed World War II, changed the world, and changed the world we live in today. So for all those people who are sort of interested in that time period and how did we get to the world that we live in, this book will help them understand that.
That is awesome. Well, you have been fantastic. Thank you for making some time for us. Good luck with the book, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you, sir.
James, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and again, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Definitely. Have yourself a wonderful day. There he goes. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Evan Stewart with us today. Myron Taylor, the man nobody knew. We are going to take a brief time out. I think we may have